All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Honest Defense. Today, I am honored to be joined by Matthew Bradford. Matt enlisted in the Marine Corps out of high school. In September 2006, his unit was deployed to Haditha, Iraq. And in January 2007, he was severely wounded after stepping on an improvised explosive device in Haditha. Matthew lost his vision and both of his legs. But the word inspirational gets thrown around a lot. It's been, I think, really devalued by Instagram posts with empty quotes, but Matthew really is inspirational. I've been following him on Twitter for forever. I love watching him working out and pushing the sled because it gets me off my ass when I'm feeling lazy about going to the gym. I've been a fan of Matthew's for a while. Matt, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me on.
I like to always start the show by asking people about how they grew up because it's fun for me to kind of see if there's some sort of through line between what people were like as kids compared to what they do when they're older. So can you walk me through, I think you grew up in Kentucky. Can you tell me what you were like growing up? Did you know you wanted to be in the military? What kind of kid were you like?
I know if I had the attitude that I do now, the mindset when I was a kid, then there's no telling, where I'd be. I was not I was just your typical teenager. I would go out and I would play sports, but like staying, active in the gym or just trying to find ways to get out and push myself just didn't happen at all. But so I was born in Virginia. My dad worked for the government there, and I only lived there for a year or two. And then when my parents got divorced, like all of my mom's family is from here, Kentucky, and that's where we moved back to. And it's interesting when you talk about my mom and my dad. My mom was more of we were paycheck to paycheck, and you always knew when it was, taxes or paycheck day because we'd probably go out and have a good meal. But I learned then how to appreciate life, to be grateful for all the blessings that I do have. The thing we didn't expect a bunch of gifts for Christmas, but we expected 2 or 3. But the one thing we always got was love, and you learn how to appreciate the smaller things in life. And after my freshman year in high school, when I moved to live with my dad in Virginia, my dad, Air Force veteran, retired from the government for 30 years. He was, well off, but he grew up on a farm and I learned a lot from how to work ethic. If I want anything in life, I want to work for it. And that's what he preached and he taught me. And it wasn't just, hey, Dad, let me have, $100. I'm going out. He's like, if you want it, go cut the grass, go do this. And so it's just learn to appreciate the smaller things in life and learn, if I want something, that I don't have to go work for it. And, and of course, when 9/11 happened, I was a freshman in high school. And before that, the military was not in my sight at all. Like nothing was really. I was just all about living that day and socializing with my friends.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about love. And when I grew up, I was lucky. I got to see a lot of people who weren't very well off financially. And I got to see people who were really well off financially. And there were happy people who didn't have any money. There were happy people who did have money, and there were miserable people who didn't have money, and miserable people who did have money. And the difference was really, it was love. Was there love in the house? And however well off a family was, especially as a kid, you didn't really notice it. You noticed were the parents around? Did they care about their kids? Did they talk to their kids? And I think you can see now that we're grown up, you can kind of see how that played out. That the kids who got the love tend to be better people in general. Like they know what love is, so now they know how to love and they know how to care for other people and do things for other people. And so I think that's such a big notion that gets forgotten. Is just you don't need material wealth. You need that wealth of love, and that's really how you build a strong, healthy person.
And I think, especially growing up and just having grandparents in my life. We spent a lot of time at my grandpapa's house in Kentucky. And I mean, it was where me and my cousins would go hang out and spend the night and, interact with your grandparents. And you see the love shared between those two for, over 40 years. And, the family togetherness to me, I think was a lot more, it was more, you could see it more back in the day than I think now, but sitting on the front porch, spending time with your family, I saw a lot of that growing up, and I appreciated and I enjoyed every minute of it, and I miss my grandparents today because I feel like especially once my granny passed away, then that she was the matriarch of the family, and you start losing some of those moments of that you grew up with.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, the best thing you can do is remember those lessons and pass them on to the next generation, because that's, it's the circle of life. You know that the older generations are going to leave us eventually, and so you just
Hmm.
try to carry on what they did and instill that in your kids. That's the best thing you can do.
Most definitely.
So you talked about, so you were in high school on 9/11. You're a few years older than me because I was in junior high school. Uh, what was that feeling that you had on that day on 9/11, that morning that it happened?
I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, this is before then. You hear about the USS Cole and all the stuff going on over in like Kosovo, and I was too young to hear about Operation Desert Storm and all this stuff. But I just went to school as a normal kid, and then my friend told me after first period, and throughout the day they didn't have the TVs in their school turned on, so you kind of went through your day. But when I got home, you could see that the streets were empty and that pretty much everybody was in their house watching it on television. So you start realizing, wow, this is something serious, and then you start seeing the President Bush, come out and give his speech to the nation, and the famous Ground Zero video that he did with the air horn, and then you start seeing the unity and the love for this nation, this country, being shared by everybody. That this country's now in war, and it's the one thing I loved and was how much people just united with each other and stood up for the flag and what it represents, knowing that we're going to be sending off our young 18, 19, 20, 21 year olds here in the next few months, and they're going to be defending freedom and make sure terrorists don't ever let them, bring 9/11 again. And I remember I was one of those students, especially when I lived with my dad, right outside of Fort Lee in Virginia. And I always had the magnets on the back, the yellow ribbon magnets. And then, around 9/11 is when Black Hawk Down come out. And I started watching that movie over and over again. And it's like, okay, maybe the military is what I want to do. Maybe it's my time. I don't, at first it was the Army Ranger and then the Air Force, because my dad was in the Air Force. And then it would come to the Marines. I was playing basketball with one of the Marine Corps recruiters, and it just kind of sold me because I didn't want to spend years in on training. Like when I signed up, I wanted to go through my basic schools and I wanted to get to a unit and deploy right away because I wanted to go fight.
Right. It's funny. A lot of guys say that after 9/11, they were ready to go and deploy, and they were afraid that they were going to miss the war. That if they didn't deploy right away, it was going to be just some quick thing and it was going to be over.
Yeah, I was actually when I was down in Camp Lejeune in September, and I was talking with some Marines with the Sixth Marines, and uh, and I realized like when I first joined the Marine Corps, like we had some old veterans, old retired guys would come in and talk and give you like lessons about leadership and just basic values. And then I realized when I was speaking to the Marines in September, I was that old guy, and it's like here, because a lot of those Marines, they never once they joined, the war was basically over for just the basic infantryman to rotate in and out of Iraq or Afghanistan, and it hit me. I'm like, now I'm that old guy sharing these leadership values and trying to teach them how to lead their Marines and keep them trained up to know that war might happen soon. You never know. There's a lot of bad people in this world.
Yeah, it's like what you were talking about with your grandparents. It's now you're that generation that's got to teach the younger generation those new rules, and you've got to be ready to step up. Because I mean, I feel the same way when I'm around younger guys, and I'm like, oh, I'm the person that they're looking to for advice, and it feels weird to be in that position, but you have to know it when you're in it, and be ready and be prepared to say, okay, I've got to be the role model here.
That's one thing I've always tried to share with the younger generation. I'm a leadership coach for my high school football team in Virginia, and I speak about when you give them that platform, like how are you going to use that platform? There's a lot of people in this world that take advantage of their platform and they don't do good with it. And although the situation that led me to this platform, but it gave me the opportunity to not only share my story but to inspire and give hope and motivation to those who are younger, who are my age, and possibly who older, that no matter what you're struggling with or whatever bad day you're having, just keep putting one foot forward. I think that's what God does to us. He puts obstacles in our way, and I compare each day to another battle, another patrol, and when I was in the Marines, and when you're out in the middle of patrol and it's 95 to 100 degrees, you can't just quit and like, I'm going home.
Right.
You got to keep pushing through. You got to embrace the suck, as they say.
So when you first signed up for the Marines, so you knew after 9/11, like you were going to join the military. You sign up right after high school. Was there ever a moment when you were like, what am I getting myself into? Going to basic training, maybe on that bus down to South Carolina. I think this is where you did your basic down in for Paris Island. Is that what it's called? Where the
Yep,
Marines
Paris Island.
Yeah.
I never really had any of those moments. I was excited. When I August of my senior, right before my senior year in high school, I signed up to the delayed entry program, or I turned 18 in August. Sorry about that. And in December, I signed up to the delayed entry program in infantry. They gave me my date when I go to boot camp, and all I had to do was graduate and give them my diploma. So it was just kind of knowing what was next, and I graduated in June, and by September of '05, I was on a bus headed to South Carolina, and I went in on the buddy program. So I had a friend I graduated high school with. He was actually my first friend when I moved to Virginia. Like, him and I worked together at one of our neighbors' houses, and he kind of helped me kind of get used to the Dinwiddie, Virginia area, and get to know people and meet people. So it made it a little bit easier having him there. But, just like they say in anything, the first few days when you're going in 100 million different directions, you're getting screamed at, yelled at, that's when you realize, like, what in the world was I thinking?
Right.
But once you kind of get past those first few days and it starts slowing down just a little bit, and you kind of like, okay, this is what you're going to expect. You're going to get yelled at, you're going to get screamed at. But at the end of the day, being put in all these chaotic situations is going to better you, later on in life. For some reason, there's something you're going to be in some situation where you're going to look back and be like, this is why they were yelling at us. These situations making us run around in like circles pretty much.
Right.
But I know when I got to Paris Island, and it's like growing up playing sports, you understand the value of team. But, the first few days when we were there, when we were sitting on those yellow footprints, you realize that these guys around me, majority of them are infantry guys. They're going to be with me for a while. This is my team. This is my brotherhood. The I and me was taken away, and it's the we and us now. Like, everything we're going to do it together. And I read a lot, and I just got through reading Joe Theismann's book. And he mentioned in there the word team. Together, everyone can achieve more. And it's like, that's stuck with me ever since I read that. I just love that, when I share it with high school athletes or anybody. It's just together, everyone achieves more. At the end of the day, you could do so much as an individual, but if you don't have your team around you, you can't do nothing at all.
I've heard you mention the yellow footprints before. Can you explain the significance of those to people who aren't familiar with it?
Basically, when you pull onto Paris Island, the first place that you step off the bus onto the ground is those yellow footprints. It's right in front of kind of the forming area. When they yell at you to tell you to get off the van, the bus, they tell you to go get on the yellow footprints. And now you're on Paris Island. That's when the transformation begins. That's when they're going to break you down as a civilian and bring you up as a recruit to a Marine. And it's those famous yellow footprints of Paris Island.
And as you guys are going through basic training, is it in your head that, hey, we might be going right off to Iraq or Afghanistan, right out of here? Are you thinking seriously about, hey, every day here is preparing me to actually go to war? Or are you more just stuck in the moment of trying to survive basic training?
Stuck in the moment, but then also, like, our drill instructors they constantly kept pushing it down our throat, that yes, we're in war right now, and yes, we're going to be deployed sometime after we leave recruit training. And two of our our drill instructors were Purple Heart recipients from the Fallujah battle. So wow. We saw it up front, when we got there. And a lot of those drill instructors just either got back from the early push into Baghdad, or maybe a trip to Afghanistan, but we knew what we were doing and where we were going once we left recruit training.
How long after you finished training did you go to Iraq?
I actually went to recruit training September 6th of 2005 and landed in Kuwait September 11, 2006.
Wow.
So literally a year later. And, when I mentioned earlier, this is what I wanted to do. I didn't want to wait around. Like
Right.
I wanted to get over there.
So yeah, you were ready to just get action, and you were on the front lines, right? You were infantry.
Infantry. I left. I graduated from recruit training December of '05, and then January of '06, I checked into School of Infantry at Camp Geiger, and I was there until middle of March. And then once I graduated, we were assigned to Second Battalion, Third Marines in Hawaii, and they just got back from Afghanistan. So once we got to Hawaii, we went straight into a workup.
Yeah.
Started preparing for our next preparing for the next deployment.
Wow. And you wanted infantry from the start, right? I mean, that's you said, "Hey, I want to go get after it. This is the best way to do it, so I'm going infantry." Was that kind of your
Yeah,
thought process?
it was. And I remember when having the conversation with my dad, and he was like, "You do know what infantry does, right?" And it's I did. And you could our recruiter was he was on the push up to Baghdad, so he shared stories. And so you watch the videos, especially in the 0304 time period, and like you see these things. And and during that time, like you mentioned, like so many people were wanting to join, and just we wanted to go get some.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I remember after 9/11, there was, I mean, my dad he'd been in the army before I was born. When I was younger, he had gotten out, and the day after 9/11, he signed back up. And I know there were a lot of people doing that, and it changed the course of a lot of people's lives. That people who hadn't even thought about the military, like you said, I know what I want to do now. And it's and you said that day, it's bittersweet, because obviously it's one of the worst tragedies to happen in this country. But you're right in that it united us, and it brought people together to say, hey, whatever our differences are, we can unite around the idea of we need to preserve this country.
And I wouldn't have it any other way. Going, like, if I could go back and like change anything about it, yeah, I wouldn't. And I feel like that decision was kind of it kind of created who I am today.
Yeah.
And it's put so many wonderful and amazing people in my life that I couldn't imagine. And I think about moving to my dad and how much of a blessing that was, because in Kentucky at that time, it was there. I don't think I had much opportunity. Like, I don't know if I would have found a recruiting office or a recruiter. So when I moved to live with my dad, like, he put me in the right position and to meet the right people. There was a guy who went to the Marines a year before I did, and then in my graduating class there was two other of my friends who joined the Marines. So it's like it was, it put those people in my life to where I would ultimately, join the Marines and live this life that I love.
So when you got to Haditha, can you walk me through? Did you have a typical day of what you guys were doing on a day-to-day basis there?
It was, in 2006 it was pretty hostile over there, and it was kind of the whole surge was getting ready to happen. The Fallujah, Ramadi had been, those battles, which, a lot of Marines, shed blood and gave that ultimate sacrifice. And, Haditha was kind of the area that wasn't touched by many American troop units, so it was kind of the Al Qaeda's last stronghold for any kind of like any kind of like stronghold in Iraq. It was probably the largest dam in Iraq, and if they'd taken that over, they could have flooded all the way down to basically Fallujah. It was close to the Syrian border, and I remember when we pulled into Al Assad, and we were only there for kind of overnight before we went into Haditha. That 3-3, the unit that we were relieving, the guy was like, "Man, we feel bad for what y'all are getting ready to get into," and they ended up losing, I believe, 14 Marines. And and when we got in there, it was firefight after firefight from the beginning. And our fob, which was right in the middle of town, so we got constantly mortared every day. We were living in Iraqi homes like that we took over and we created into a fob, and it was in good mortar range from the insurgents. And you went on so many patrols, multiple patrols a day, 3-4, sometimes longer. You never realize, like, when you go on this patrol, it's like, all right, who's coming home? Are you coming back? are you coming home alive? And you see your friends go out and you're like, now which one of those are they coming back? And, I think on that deployment, the first 40 days, I believe on average, we had one casualty a day. And it was, but we were a company of Marines, about 200 of us. We had one one rifle platoon on patrol, one rifle platoon that would man the post duty, and we would rotate back and forth. And then we had one rifle platoon who was our mobile unit. Our mobile unit got hit so hard the first few months that I felt safer walking than I did in a vehicle. And but we're in a town of almost 40,000 people, and you kind of like you look at the things that you did have, and when you were on patrol, you're on work, you're working, you were serious, you were like your head was on a rotating all over the place to see if you can find wires, looking at windows, looking around, covering each danger zone to make sure you're not only looking out for yourself but for those Marines around you. And and it was just, but once we got back to the fob, knowing that it was right in the middle of town and we could get mortared at any minute, we were 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. We got to know each other even closer, and it really built that friendship, that brotherhood that the Marine Corps is known for today.
When you guys you set up your base in these Iraqi houses, what were you guys eating? Like, where were you getting food from? Was it just MREs?
Once we first got over there, it was MREs, but we had like a little makeshift chow hall, and the mobile unit would go back and forth about 2 or 3 times a week to the dam to pick up some drinks and food for us. But once we got over there and got everything squared away and settled, you could start getting like food shipped over. But it was a lot of canned foods: Vienna sausages, beanie weenies, beef jerky, and it was that kind of food. But when we were on patrol base, like you would take some of those canned food products with you, but yeah, you would eat a lot of MREs as well. And
wow. And when you would go on these patrols, how long would a patrol last? How many hours?
At minimum, probably 3 hours. You go out into your sector that they want you to patrol, and you check it out. You might, go into a house and meet some of the locals and just kind of show your presence, let them know that we're here to protect them, and we're not the bad guys. And, but, like sometimes you'd go on a 2 or 3 day patrol mission where you're going out doing patrols in a certain area in town, and you're staying the night at a house. You're going to wake up and you're going to go patrol a different area. You're going to stay a night in a different part of the house, a different part of the city. And it's, so it's, you get kind of used to those days, but usually a couple hours out. And
how much sleep were you getting? Because I have trouble sleeping on a good day in my suburban quiet house. I couldn't imagine you're getting into a firefight, just going into a random house, going to sleep, and getting up just knowing that it might happen again the next day. Were you on a normal sleep schedule? Were you getting 8 hours, or what was sleep like for you?
You go on 2 or 3 patrols a day, and say 3 hours long. So it's like you get back to the fob and you have enough time to maybe grab something to eat, clean your weapon. You might get like a couple hours of rest, but we were all young then, so it was a little bit easier to just push through. But I do say if I did get some of the best sleep over there, though. I mean, maybe it's just the body was so exhausted, and when you put your head down on your pillow, then you're out.
Right.
But you just don't, and it was just don't worry about everything around you. It's like, and I think that's what it was. It's like you knew something could possibly happen to you, but it's just at the end of the day, you're like, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. If it's my day, then it's my day. But yeah, it was definitely probably the best sleep. And I think still today, I'm on one of those little 4 hour on, 4 hour offs, because I don't sleep very well throughout the night either. It's like I'll very hard for say 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and then I'm up, and I'm more awake at 3 a.m. than I am at probably 1 or 2 p.m.
Right. Well, we have that in common, that's for sure.
Yeah.
When you would get into a firefight, how long would first of all, was there a typical method that these firefights would start? Like, would it be someone shooting from outside a window? And how long would a firefight last?
It all depended. It was like we got shot out of cars, out of windows, A lot of times they would try to set up like an RPG or IED would go off, and then they would, open up on guns. They'd shoot us, open up on us. It was just trying to like ambush us that way. Get us off, get us unexpected by blowing up something to where we're gonna like, okay, now we're gonna like heads down a little bit, and then they're gonna open up on us, with their AKs. But they would go from a couple of pop shots, we get take cover, and then they're done, and then it open up where something would explode, and then next thing you know, they're loading down on us, and we're in a firefight. So it all depends on, every time we went to Market or Boardwalk, which were the kind of the two main roads in the town or closer to the palm groves, I always clicked my weapon on fire, because once you hit those roads, you're kind of looking to get into something. And, as some of those patrols, when you're out there and the roads are empty, then something's going to happen, and because not too many of the Iraqi civilians will be out in the streets when insurgents are there, or something's going to happen.
When you're in the middle of a firefight, I mean, what's going on in your mind? I think it's hard for a civilian to even think about, how do you maintain rationality and calmness. I feel like most of us would just be panicking. How are you able to focus and just say, hey, I just got to figure out how to end this, or whatever it is that you're actually trying to do?
I think it slows down a lot, or it did for me at least. I was always on point, so I was the first one with my team leader to the left. We were the first two up there, and when you hear rounds go off, you try to find cover and you try to figure out where those rounds are coming from, and then once you figure out that, like, how are you going to engage the enemy, and make sure that if there's any civilians around, make sure they're not in the way, and it's just making sure you cover and conceal, and make sure the rounds are either coming from the front to the left or right, and it's, but I do believe it slows down a lot, and a lot of the stuff through training goes into effect, and although you're not going to get shot and killed in training, but, when you got rounds going over your head, you better put your head down and find something to get behind, or you are going to be, shot and killed. So it's just, to me, it slowed down a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. The closest thing that I've experienced that I think I can compare it to is I do jujitsu, and there's a similar feeling that when there's someone on you and things start to slow down, and you realize that you can't panic, because then that person's going to strangle you. So you do have to just breathe and slow things down, and force yourself to think about what am I going to do to get out of this, and use that training. So I know it's a small percentage of what you were going through, but I think it's probably a similar idea.
And if you think about what I mentioned earlier about those chaotic situations in recruit training, it's like, where are these going to factor in at? And when you're in a gunfight, I mean, those are very chaotic situations, and you just got to learn to be calm and collect yourself, and make sure everybody's around you doing good. They're alive, and they're cover, and then you like, okay, what am I going to do? And what do we do in training when we take fire? And it's just, just calming down and taking that deep breath, and I think that's one of the values that my wife loves about me today is, when chaotic situations happen, or overwhelming situations, it's, you got to learn to just take it easy,
Right.
And being stressed out or overwhelmed or freaking out ain't going to get anything done. It's more than likely going to get you hurt or killed, or somebody else hurt or killed. And it's just, you got to calm down, assess the situation. And, you've been trained what to do, and it's your time to do what you've been trained to do.
I think that's one of the most valuable assets that the rest of us can learn from veterans, because I know my dad's the same way, where it's like, okay, if there's a problem that comes up, how do we address it? What's the first step we take? What's the second step we take? And you kind of just, through training and through experience, how to put things in perspective and say, first of all, is this a life and death situation? No. Okay. If it's not, then there's zero reason to panic. So
Yeah.
now that we're not panicking, now let's figure out, how do we address this step by step?
Yeah, because once if you're that way, then it's not going to get it done any quicker, and just because
Right.
you get frustrated and overwhelmed, it's not going to get it done.
Right.
It's just going to cause more stress to the situation. And And this is what I realized. It's like, what, things happen for a reason. And, I'd rather go into it calm, because that's about the only way to really assess the situation, to see what you can do to change it or fix it.
So let's go to the day you got injured. Can you talk to me about what was the plan that day? What was your goal? And just kind of walk me through that day.
So we were on a basic IED patrol, January 18, 2007. It was around, I guess we stepped off probably around 3:30, some in the afternoon. But, it was just, you go on so many of these patrols, and our squad alone engaged the enemy so many times. But, we always come back with the same amount of Marines that we left with. And, I was actually called home. I spoke to my uncle on the phone just before we went to the briefing room to get briefed on the mission, because I was excited, because this is the middle of January. We're going to be transitioning out of here in a few months, and the things at that time were starting to die down a little bit. And we weren't getting into many gunfights as we were before. So I was excited, like, okay, and at that time I was also at a point where, like, I was ready to come back to Hawaii, get my own Marines, be their fire team leader, and train them up so we can go on deployment in 8 months. And so we went on patrol, and I honestly don't remember the first part of the patrol, but I do remember the last part of it, when we were on the street that laid parallel to the Euphrates River. It was actually called Park Place. And we were passing a compound wall, and it's in the middle of the palm groves, which is like a lot of palm trees. It's kind of like where the Iraqis grow their vegetation and their farmland and all that stuff. And so I look out past this compound wall in this little wooded area, and there's this palm tree. It's probably 30 yards in front of me off to the right, and it had a white bag leaned up against the tree. And, when you're looking for, IED or, command wires or whatever it is, there's always like an indicator. They'll mark it with an indicator to let them know that, okay, there's either an IED here or a weapons cache, something, so they're familiar with it. And to me, that white bag was very suspicious. So I looked to my team leader to the left, and I looked to the Marines behind me, and I let them all know about this white bag, really, really keep your eye out now. And as I turned back around, I was just past the compound wall, and there was a ditch that laid perpendicular from the road I was on that went inside a pipe underneath the road. And as I turned back around, I looked down, and there were the command wires laying in that ditch that went inside the pipe. And in a matter of seconds, it exploded directly underneath me, and it sent shrapnel into my eyes. And I remember it all. I was conscious through it all. But from there, it's just, a normal day went to kind of like you're dreaming, and I could hear the Marines around me, the squad leader running up, calling for QRF, and it was something, and people always ask me, like, what was going through your mind when it was all going down? And really, I could never find a reason, like what even happened. And I didn't know what happened until 3-4 weeks later, when I woke up in Maryland. 1 minute I was on patrol with my brothers and the Marines, and the next thing you know, here I am in the United States. None of those Marines are with me, and I got all these nurses and corpsmen walking in, and now here's my mom and my dad, and but finding out from my dad when he told me I lost my legs, and it was more than likely that my vision would not come back again. Like, I just cried. Like, I was so depressed, tears would fall down from my eyes, and I would hope that a tear would hit a leg and grow it back, and I couldn't tell I didn't have legs before then, because my phantom pains were so bad that I felt like I had feet. And then my dad would always, like, talk to a doctor over my shoulder or a nurse, but they'd be whispering. So all I could think in my head is, I've been captured. Like, I've been blindfolded, because I can still feel my feet, and these people are whispering over my shoulder. And but like, once he told me that I lost my legs, then it ruined me. Like, I didn't care much for losing the vision. Like, that didn't bother me. It's just I wanted my legs to be back.
What was it about the legs that was so much more important than the vision?
I don't know, and it's funny thing is, looking back then to now, that I'd much rather have my vision over my legs. But I just wanted, I never expected to live my life with no legs or no vision, I guess, and you see this stuff on TV. And when I signed up to join the Marines, I knew the risk that I'm either going to go over and come home alive, or I'm going to go over and not come home at all. There was no middle game, no, coming home injured or wounded. And honestly, before the deployment, we didn't hear much about guys getting wounded, and I didn't watch the news to know what's going on in the war. And honestly, being in the barracks, we didn't have cable. So and we were always in the field. But it was just, now here I am laying in a hospital bed trying to figure out at the age of 20, like, what in the hell am I going to do with my life now? Like, what am I going to be? I was so independent on getting out away from under the parents' roof and living my life, to now I'm going to have to rely on them to be there, at every beck and call. And, I'm 20 years old. Like, what am I never going to find a lady to marry? Am I not going to have a family? Like, I wasn't the greatest of high school students. And, now going back with no vision, this is going to make it even harder. And it's just all these things in my head. And, and I wouldn't eat. I was so depressed. I was so angry that, like, I got to so weak and skinny that it was hard for me to lift my head up off my hospital bed. And I knew that if the bomb didn't kill me, then you know what? Then I want to starve myself, and I'm going to, do it this way. And that's just, for the first few weeks, that was my mentality. That was my mindset. It's like, I don't want to be here on this place anymore, and, but through that all, I kept having this image of that white bag and those command wires in my head. And I didn't know where that was coming from, because all I know is I got blown up. Like, right. I had nobody to tell me what happened to me. And even when the Marines from Iraq would get my phone number in the hospital, they would try to call, and I felt like I let them down. So I wouldn't even talk to them on the phone, and it was, and it didn't take until April when my friends got back and they drove to see me in Richmond, Virginia at the Poly Trauma Center, that one of the Marines who was directly behind me told me the whole story about me yelling for there's a white bag up here, and there, and then I realized that that's the image that I keep seeing in my head, was that white bag and those command wires.
So can you explain the technical aspect of that? So I just to explain how an IED even works. So you had already stepped on that trip wire when you saw the bag. So by the time you spotted it, it was too late to avoid it. Was that how it happened?
So the bag was about 30 yards in front of the command wire, and the command wire was basically commandette. So somebody was sitting in a house looking out a window, and once they saw some Marines around their IED, then they just pushed a button or did something, and they got me right on top of it. That's for sure.
Wow.
But as I mentioned about the 12 Marines leaving, we come home with 12, and so this is the first time that we've had any casualties. And finding out my injuries, my left leg was amputated at the blast. My right leg was basically pointing in a different direction, and shrapnel in my eyes. But and the Marines and the corpsmen, they didn't expect me to live much longer after that, and the Marine who kind of explained it to me a few months later was right behind me, was sitting there holding my hand waiting for QRF as they put me in the high back to send me off in the medevac. The one familiar voice I heard was from my senior drill instructor, who was a platoon sergeant with Echo Company 2-3. He said, "You'll be fine, Bradford." And then after that, I fell asleep, or I passed out, or died. I don't know. It was the last words I heard, and I didn't hear any other voices until I woke up 3 weeks later from the coma.
So was it a medically induced coma? Was that they'd put you in a coma for 3 weeks to try to help clean you up, I guess?
Yeah, and medically induced, and then I lost pretty much a body's worth of blood. Of course, the left leg was amputated. The right leg was later amputated, and then I had some intestinal damage, bladder, stomach, shrapnel in my left forearm, which was basically wrapped around a nerve. And then my right hand was pretty much damaged. All my metacarpal bones in my right hand were broken. And then the shrapnel in my eye, had shrapnel penetrate my left eye that was lodged in my brain. And they actually had to put a tube in my head so I didn't have a brain aneurysm, because I kept trying to react. And so it was just to keep me calm. And mean, I was injured on the 18th of January around 4:30 in the afternoon, and I was in Bethesda, Maryland, Sunday night. So they rushed me over here pretty quickly because they didn't know how my eye pressure would do
Right.
with the altitude and flying.
Wow. So you said when you first came to and you were aware of your injuries, you said you didn't want to keep going. What was the first step that you made to get past that feeling of just starving yourself or whatever it was, just to not have to deal with this anymore? What did you do to get out of that? How did you start the momentum the other direction?
I think one of the main reasons, and people always ask me, is like, what was the moment that changed your life? And I'm like, really, it wasn't just one moment. It was multiple moments over the few months. And one of the corpsmen and the nurses, I mean, they were so nice and to me as well. And I was so young, but they treated me like a Marine. Like, if I told them no, they would tell me yes. They never took no for an answer, and they pushed me and challenged me. And I think that alone really, like, because at that time I was like really questioning, like, what am I going to do with life? But they always reminded me that I was a Marine at the end of the day. And one of the corpsmen brought in one night a batch of brownies and a glass of milk. And to me, that's the first moment that I realized that once I had those two brownies, because she didn't let me tell her no, like, I woke up and I feel like that light switch came on the next day. And then I kept having these chaplains and these Marines would come in my room every day and talk with me over and over again. And two Marines in particular, or two Marines that were wounded in my company. One lost a leg. He was injured 2 months before me, and then the other one was shot in the head. And they would stop in and visit me as much as they possibly could. And the one with the prosthetic, he kind of explained the journey and the path that, yeah, it's not going to be easy. There's going to be many ups and downs. It's a roller coaster, but there's always light at the end of the tunnel. And those familiar voices and the familiar names gave me hope, because I knew that no matter what I'm doing or where I'm going, that at the end of the day, the Marine Corps is going to be there, and I'm still a Marine. And like I mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You can't just quit on things. You can't quit on a patrol, and I can't quit on this. I'm not fighting insurgents now. I'm fighting these demons in my head, and I'm fighting these amputations, this blindness. Like, I got new battle to fight now. And, I made these goals in my head, these objectives, and I went after them. And those Marines and the detachment of Bethesda gave me all the motivation that, okay, I want to make it through this. I want to reenlist. That's my goal. It's going to be tough, but I'm going to do everything I possibly can to do it. And I started getting better. They started taking me off pain meds, and I started eating more, because I realized that, okay, I got to get out of this hospital bed. That's the first goal. Opportunity is outside that door, and that outside that door is going to take me where I need to go in life. So, you know what? Suck it up and get out. So I went from the hospital bed to a wheelchair. I remember doing a lap around the 5th floor in Bethesda, and I was proud of that moment. But I got to Bethesda on the 21st of January. I was in a coma for 3 weeks, and by March 21st, I was on an ambulance headed to Richmond, Virginia. Because once I started up and I started getting taken off pain meds and eating, I became stronger, and I started healing up a lot more.
Wow.
And it's truly amazing how far you can go when you put your attitude in the right spot.
Were there negative emotions that would creep in? I mean, did you ever feel anger either towards the insurgents, towards the military for putting you in that situation, towards yourself for putting yourself in that situation? Was there, or were you, once you were on that trajectory of just trying to get better, was that 100% the focus?
I was just focused. I still have bad days today. I think we all do. Is just trying to find those motivations to get you through those bad days. And, you talk about the insurgent. Like, today, like, I'm always reminded when I wake up every day that, man, I don't have legs, or I don't have vision. Like, I pray every night that I'm going to wake up the next day and I'm going to be able to see my wife and kids for the first time. I wake up and I still see darkness, and I'll go grab my prosthetic legs. And so I'm always reminded of that day. But the ultimate motivation that I have is making sure that insurgent, wherever he is in this world, doesn't ever have the sense of victory over me. Like he might have knocked me down that day, but I got back up and I got back up stronger and a fighter. And to me, that's all the motivation I need. I don't care where he is at in this world, but you know what? He knocked me down, but didn't defeat me.
What was it
And
like? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say, and it's just the fact of being a Marine, and I realized early on in Bethesda that when I can get through this. Like this is just another battle, and I'm gonna try to live my life just as any normal person would do. I might do it differently, but I'm gonna get it done at the end of the day. And and it's just being a Marine and having that title I earned, and to me, I still earn it every day. When I wake up every morning and I go to war.
What was it like when you started to physically heal? I assume the next step then was you had to learn, how do I live now without vision, without legs? What was that process like, just to try to adjust to this new life that you were going to have?
You know, it was tough, but I like to have fun. I'm humorous. I like to laugh about things, and to me, I think people always talk about the vision and amputations and learning how to live that way, but my right hand was out of commission for 3 months.
Wow.
So I'm learning to do everything with my left hand. And to me, that's a challenge right there. I always
Yeah.
ask people like, the hardest thing about overcoming these injuries is trying to eat Chinese food with your opposite hand, and then you throw in the
It's
blindness. It's
it's
like,
hard enough to eat Chinese food with your good hand.
exactly. I feel like I got Chinese food, I got it all over me. I don't even think I took a bite of it, but it was just having fun along the way, because I know once I got to Richmond, Virginia, like this is when I really started focusing more on, I got out of the room. I got out of my hospital bed and I started going to PT and occupational therapy. And every time I went out of my room, I always had a poncho liner or a blanket over my lap, because I realized that that blanket, hid my amputations. With that blanket on my lap, nobody can see that I don't have legs. But, it kind of gave me the strength and the courage to get out of my room, that security blanket. But, the more I got out of my room and the more I got to talking with others and joking around and just being familiar with and getting comfortable with, having amputations, then I slowly started taking that blanket off, that security blanket. And it made me understand that, your legs aren't growing back. This is who you are. You got to be comfortable with who you are. And, you lost your legs, serving this country, you doing what you wanted to do, wearing the uniform. So I was proud of those, and it gave me the chance to take that blanket off, but it also got me out of the room and got me moving around more. And, I think a lot of people today are, who have scars or who have amputations, or, they're more worried about what other people think. At the end of the day, it's who you are and how you feel about these things, and just be proud of it, and I always tell people, each scar, that's who you are. Each scar has its story, embrace it, be proud of it, because you know what? You're a better person and a stronger person for whatever you had to go through in life.
I think that's a lesson for everyone, because we all try to cover up our flaws. We're all embarrassed by our flaws, no matter how small they are. I was always the smallest kid in class growing up, and I hated being short, and kids you get picked on and that sort of thing. And I don't know, at a certain point I just said, all right, this is just who I am. There's nothing I can do about it, and
Yeah.
I have advantages in other ways, and so I'm going to use those advantages, and I'm not going to be afraid or be embarrassed of who I am. And I think
Exactly.
we all go through that, and there's that moment when you just say, okay, this is who I am, and I'm going to accept it, and I'm going to accept the challenges, and I'm going to accept the advantages of whatever it is I've been given. And there's a peace that you get, I think, when you reach that moment.
Most definitely. And I think once you reach that moment and you feel that, then I think ultimately you become a better person, because you know what it's like. You think of some burdens that you have, and that's a big burden when you have amputations or you got scars or these flaws and stuff. And it's like, you know what? I don't care what other people think. This is who I am, and I'm proud of who I am.
When you were going through your rehab and your PT, did you focus on one thing at a time? Was it, let's focus on, okay, how do I learn Braille, or whatever's going to help me, with the vision? Did you focus specifically on working with prosthetics? Did you focus on trying to get your right hand back, or were you kind of doing everything at the same time?
I focused on my I focused on prosthetics first because I realized that the vision would be easier learning how to walk. And by the time I got to San Antonio at the end of June is when I stood up on my prosthetics for the first time, and I really learned a lot with like moving around on prosthetics. And these are my legs now. So I'm going to make sure that I take care of them, and that's going to be my main focus. And it took me a while before I started like really focusing on the visual aspect of it all, because I was still trying to figure that part out, and I didn't want that to be forced down my throat. And unfortunately, one of my OT therapists who took a couple semesters on blind rehab, he was like, oh, well, let me see what I could do with this guy. And I wasn't ready to learn the visual part yet. And it didn't take me for another year until I went to the blind rehab school, because I knew that, if I'm going to reenlist in the Marines, they're going to accept my packet. Then not only am I going to learn how to walk, which, I can do it in a wheelchair, but I'm going to have to learn how to do email, and I'm going to have to learn to be independent and mobile. And I felt like the blind rehab part of it was more important for me to learn and be ready to learn it instead of it being pushed down my throat.
So were you eventually able to reenlist?
I was, yeah. I was so
Wow.
April 7th, 2010, actually March 23rd of 2010 is when I got the phone call that my packet got accepted. And April 7th, 2010 is when I raised my right hand and reenlisted, and I was the first blind double amputee in the history of the Marine Corps to do that.
Wow, that's incredible. And were you able were you able to actually work for the Marines? Was there a role that they had you fulfill?
Yeah, I wanted to be. They asked me, "There's like, what do you want to do?" And I wanted to be with the Wounded Warriors. So either the Wounded Warrior Battalion is where I went in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and it was the battalion because I wanted to give back and serve others, because I had those Marines serve me. They helped me get through some of the worst days of my life, and I wanted to show others that no matter what injury you're dealing with, no matter what battle you're facing, at the end of the day, when you put your head on your pillow, you wake up to a brand new day. It's just, you got to just learn to put your head down, put one foot forward, and you can overcome anything in life. It doesn't matter what your injuries are. If you put your mind to it and your attitude is in the right spot, then you could overcome it.
Can that attitude be taught? I mean, if I had your dad here and I asked him, when Matt was a kid, was he this positive guy? Did he have just this outlook that anything can be overcome? Or was this something that you had to learn, and can other people learn it?
I think people can. It's just, it says a lot about the character and the person you are, because a lot of people, when they feel that, they're starting to hurt or struggle or pain is setting in, then, or, the thought of they're going to quit or fail, then that's when they give up, and a lot of times, sometimes the next step is the right step, and you just got to learn to push through that adversity and understand that this adversity is only going to make me stronger, and I did a baton death march in 2009, and I walked 10 of 14 miles. And this is 2 years after my injuries, and I was proud of that. 10 miles in 8 hours. But later on, I kept thinking that that was the first march that I ever quit on. When I felt like these little injuries, these minor injuries, it wasn't anything to do with my legs. It was my wrist was hurting, my lower back was hurting, and I learned that later on in life that, pain is temporary. Pain goes away. But the thought that with you for life is quitting on something. So when I went out in 2019, I went out to the Baton Death March because I realized in 2009 that I don't care how old I am. I don't care if I have to crawl. I'm going across that finish line. And I use that motivation for the next 10 years through Spartan races, through marathons, through certain, whatever it was, in the gym, pushing the sled, getting stronger, because I realized that it wasn't just getting stronger physically, it was getting stronger mentally. And when I went out in 2019, I walked all those 14 miles. And that last mile it hurt. It hurt bad. But, it was just the mental, the emotions, the 10 years of fighting, those last 4 miles stuck with me in my head that, what, I'm going to do this. That, if these prosthetics fall off, then I want to get on my hands and knees and I'm going to crawl to that finish line. And that was just my mentality and how it's grown over the last, those 10 years. It's just pain sucks. It hurts. It's going to hurt. Everything in life sometimes. But you know what? It's just, you got to keep taking those extra steps. As they told us in boot camp, the quickest way off this island is to graduate. And the quickest way to anything is just put one foot forward and keep pushing on, because each foot forward will put you in the right direction and closer to your goal.
Do people at your gym hate you? Because I feel like if I was at your gym and I was working out next to you, and I saw a guy with your attitude, just not going to quit, working out with your prosthetics and going that hard, I'd be like, man, this guy's making me look bad. Anytime I wanted to quit a set or anything, I couldn't do it with you right there next to me.
The one thing I love about my gym is it's just my trainer and a few trainers in the gym, because it's a personal training gym, is just like those corpsmen and nurses. They push me. They know that I have prosthetics and I'm blind, and they're going to do everything they can to make it safe. But at the end of the day, they're not going to let me quit on myself, or they know I could do more. And when I hit those moments where I'm like, oh, they know, right. And they push me and they motivate me, and it's the reason why I've probably connected with them so much, because they've made a better person out of me, and they've made not only physically body better, but mentally, and I don't take any pain medication, but when I go to the gym, that's my pain medication.
Yeah.
Because I know each day I'm getting better when I'm in there. Just being in there gets me better. So, and it's, I learned early on when I was learning how to walk in San Antonio that I would go into the gym every day, and in my wheelchair, I'd go to the mat, I'd sit at the mat, I'd put my prosthetics on, I'd stand up and I'd walk out. I'd rarely say anything to anyone, but my physical therapist stopped me one day and said, Matt, you don't see this, but every day when you come into the gym, you're focused, ready to work, you do what you need to do, and you stand up and you walk out of here, that there's those newer amputees who are still trying to question and figure out their own lives right now. They see a blind open amputee doing this. It only motivates them to work harder, to know that if this guy can do it, then I can do it. And at the end of the day, it's just that whole lead by example mentality. We all have those leaders in life that we look up to, that, our mentors. It doesn't matter how old you are, and if I could be a leader to these newer amputees, these newer guys with injuries who are figuring out their own lives, or, civilians and trainers in the gym, then that's my focus and my purpose in life, and I feel like we could all learn something from someone.
I had Mary Daig on the podcast a while back, and she was on the Army bomb squad, and she lost her arms because of an explosion, and she had a very similar attitude. She said, I don't want people to treat me like I'm a victim. I don't want them to have to talk down to me or feel like I'm not a whole person. I just treat me like a normal person, and yeah, I need help doing certain things, but I'm still I'm not a victim, and I feel like today there's a cachet in being a victim, that people want to play up victimhood and find what it is that makes them a victim, and really what makes you strong is people who could, we all have some reason to call ourselves a victim. We've all been victims of something, but it doesn't help to wallow in that. Is that you have to figure out how to empower yourself and use what you have to help other people, and that's how you can feel that sense of inner strength. Go ahead. Is that how you feel?
It is. When I first got hurt, that was I had two roads I could have went down. One of them was that self-pity, that victim, poor me, I got blown up, blah, blah, alcohol, drugs, and, suicide. But I chose the other road, the other path of that I'm going to live my life to the fullest. I'm going to live my life as normal as I possibly can. I'm going to go out and I'm going to do things that I truly enjoy. I want to be social, I'm going to share my story, and I'm going to hopefully get out and inspire and motivate others to go beyond their own bare minimum, understand that they could do whatever they put their mind to. Because at the end of the day, we can accomplish so much in life as long as we just put our mind to it. And the reason why a lot of us don't is because it's all mental. If you believe you can't do it, then you can't do it. You got to wake up every day and you got to believe, I want to do this. Like, it might be climbing to the top of Mount Everest, but you know what? I want to do it. And it's just, people always just walking in situations, and if they're automatically negative and they I don't think I could do it today, then they're not going to do it, and those are the people that, I love talking to people, and I love trying to put them in the right direction. But those people who just are always just me, poor me, victim, or I can't do this. And, you tell them, yeah, well, I mean, you're in the gym. You're one step closer to getting it done, getting it accomplished. But then there's another excuse and another poor me. And it's just, those people wear me out. Like, I just can't handle those people.
Yeah. Yeah. It is what it's.
Sometimes I got to calm back the Marine a little bit on that one there. It's like,
but you're right. It is this draining of energy because I find myself slipping into that here and there, and you can feel your energy draining when you have that mindset, and it's all about. There's nothing external that's draining your energy. It's internal. It's the way you're thinking about this situation. You're draining your own energy by doing this, and you're so right that it's just a matter of how you look at that situation you're in, and whatever it takes to get out of it. That's what I think for each individual person, there's a different way that you can get yourself out of that mindset. But I mean, for me, it's realizing like, hey, there's people who have it way worse than me who are doing way better than me right now. So I've got no reason to complain. And that kind of snaps me out of that negative mindset. And you've got to find your trick to get out of it.
You mentioned jiu-jitsu earlier, and I know here at the house, like I go to the gym 3 times a week, training schedule. But here at the house, I have a stationary bike out in the garage. And, when I'm at one of those days, and a lot of times those days that I don't feel like working out or I'm just in one of those moods, God, those are usually my best workouts.
Right.
And like I'll get out there, I'll get on the bike for about an hour and I'll just pedal. And, I'm out there by myself and I come back in and, it's like my mind's already in a better spot, because I really like, my wife she tells me all the time, because I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm motivated today. She's like, just go do it. Because if you don't do it, you're going to regret it. And you're going to wish you did it later.
Yeah.
And then that's how it is, and it's just like, I love to work out. I don't do it, for physical, I do it for mental. And I think that's the most important part, and as they always say, when you feel good, then your mind is good, and your body is good. So.
Yeah, I had a coach who would always say, you never feel worse when you leave the gym. If whatever kind of day you're having, however bad you feel, and you say, oh, I just don't want to work out today, I don't feel like it, go to the gym and just walk around for a few minutes. You never feel worse after the gym. You always feel worse by skipping it. And so there's no downside to just going to the gym and doing whatever you can that day.
Exactly that. Yep.
What was you talked a lot about the rehab you did for your legs, and it's funny to think about losing your vision as sort of being a secondary problem, but what was it that you did to kind of help adapt yourself to living without vision? What was that process?
Thankfully that the VAs provide, I think there's 14 blind rehabilitation centers for veterans. And the one I went to was in Chicago, and it was actually the oldest and the best one. But they put you in kind of like an apartment size room, and you're living on your own. And when you wake up every day, you're navigating around this building by yourself. You're learning white cane mobility. You're learning how to get from your room to wherever you're studying, your classroom. You're learning computers, mobility, manual skills, which is woodworking or small engine repair. You're learning day-to-day operations around the house, how to cook, how to keep a house clean, how to, get dressed. And for me, a lot of this stuff was, it wasn't new to me. Like, if I wanted, I didn't want stinky breath, I was going to figure out how to brush my teeth.
Right.
I didn't want to starve. I wanted to figure out how to eat, and,
right.
And that's one of the really bothered me early on when I was telling you about my therapist who tried to push it down my throat. Is he tried to get me to learn how to cut using like some of the hardest putty and like a plastic knife. And it really pushed me away. I learned how to cut a steak on my own. Wow. Like I figured that out on my own. And the one thing that I've learned, and I think it's just being a Marine infantryman, being bored sometimes and wandering a lot, that I figure out areas on my own. Like if, I travel to hotels a lot, I figure out where the bathroom is, where my bed is. And I navigate myself to the surroundings around me, situational awareness, and I always want to know what's around me and where it's at. And so it's like, these are just things that I just learned to pick up over the years. And I didn't want to have my mom or dad with me at all times. Like I wanted to live on my own. I wanted to take care of myself. and it's just and I think the two things that's helped me out so much being a Marines is having that routine and being organized. I do everything same step every day, and it's everything's in the same spot. I know where it is, and it's helped me, from getting out of the shower to brushing my teeth to deodorant to going out, putting my left leg on, then my right leg. It's just one thing at a time, and it's helped me out over these last 14 years. And I feel like today that I've done it for so long. I feel like sometimes I wake up and I feel like I could see that I do it so well, and having that calming aspect, just doing things slow,
Right.
not in a hurry, and I think that's helped out so much as well.
It's amazing. Everything you're saying is something that can be applied by everyone. I mean, it sounds you're saying a lot of the same things that Jordan Peterson tells just the average person is just keep your room clean. And when you don't have a purpose, you've got to find a purpose in the small things and slowly build step by step and stay organized and do the things that you need to do on a day-to-day basis and just put one foot in front of the other that way.
The one book I love to read, and I'm sure you've probably read it, is by Admiral McCraven, Make Your Bed.
Yeah.
If it's anything at the beginning of the day, just make your bed. That's your first step that you accomplished. And, if you have a hard, tough day, you come home to a freshly made bed. And
Right.
that's what it is. It's just, wake up every day and make your bed. And like, what? All right, that's done. Let me go do what's next, and have a list of things that you want to get done and start checking them off. And if you don't get it done, then move it over tomorrow. But at the end of the day, if you don't get them done, then you don't get them done. You put your head on a pillow, you're going to close your eyes, and you're going to wake up to a brand new day.
Yeah. Do, does it bother you when you think about the sacrifices that you made and that the people you served with made, and then you look at the division in the country now? Does that bother you? Do you
It
follow
bothers
what's
me.
going on?
It bothers me when I turn my TV on or I hear stories about our American flag getting burned, and you see a lot of the places around the world who don't have it as good as we do, and like this entitlement and like you're talking about this victimhood. It's like a lot of people don't realize how good we do have it over here, and I think it upsets me a lot. And I think that's you don't. It's just it it bugs me to understand that, okay, if you don't um, believe in our values, our freedoms, our democracy here, then go live in another country for a few months and see how it is over there. Burning our flag, you know, the same flag that is puts a roof over your head and probably a paycheck in your bank account and takes care of you. I don't. It bothers me a lot. This is not what I fought for, but I know that it's a strong country. We've overcome so much in life, and maybe maybe this inner problem that we're having right now, these inner battles, we just got to fight it differently now. And I think the history part of this country is these great powers, they struggle, but this country has struggled, but instead of like other powers, we haven't just vanished. We've kept pushing on.
I'm so glad there are people like you and Jocko and Tim Kennedy who have served and have seen just how bad things can get around the world, and you're able to put things in perspective, because I think that's what people really need is to just have a perspective of how we have it here compared to how so many other places in the world have it.
Believe me, it's tough sometimes to wake up and you hear some of the things people say and you see some of the things people are doing. It's like, my goodness, and I got a good collection of veteran friends who 99% of us, we all believe the same thing and agree on the same topic, that we could sit and joke about it, because as I'm sure that you really can't have an opinion about anything these days that's against the mainstream,
Right.
but it's and if you do, then you're going to be kind of pushed away or pushed out of society pretty much. But I've just learned to I worked for a congressional office for 2.5 years, and this is just working for veterans. I was invited to the State of the Union. I met the former president, former vice president, and such. And I was on another podcast, and a lady was like, "Well, you've done all this stuff before. What you ever think about running for politics?" I'm like, "No." I was a veteran working for veterans in our district, and I was called coward, and I was called all these names, and it's like,
Who called you a coward?
yeah, one of those. I mean, it was a far left group that we were meeting with, and but I realized then that what, I feel like my purpose and mission in life is way bigger doing what I'm doing now than it would be cool to do local, do politics or whatever. But I feel like my purpose in life and the reason why God kept me alive is doing what I'm doing right now, and
Yeah.
and I enjoy it way more. And having, people looking up to people, like I mentioned, doesn't matter how old you are, you got those people you look up to, and, Jocko and Jason Redman and those guys, they're just good people, and their values and their work ethic, discipline. I feel like that's important. I feel like that's a lot of people don't have that these days, but, but I feel like if we just surround ourselves with good, like-minded people, then and stick together and be there for each other when we need each other, then I feel like that's how we start changing things.
Yeah. Yeah. And just keep your world small. I think that's good advice. Matt, I know you have dad duties to get to. One more question. I just have to ask you. You said, when you first got injured and you were worried, you're a young guy, you're single, you're worried that you're never going to be able to meet someone after that point, but you're married now. You've got a beautiful family. How did you meet your wife? Give some hope to the single guys out there.
So the funny thing is, and it's funny how life works out. And when I was in San Antonio, I reenlisted. They were like, "Hey, would you rather stay in San Antonio and work in the hospital, or would you want to go to North Carolina and work at the battalion?" And I chose battalion because at that time I was like, well, that'd be a better opportunity for me being a Marine and a wounded warrior. First weekend I moved to North Carolina, I met my wife. We become really, really good friends. And a year later, I proposed to her. And April 7th, we would have hit 9 years. So we have 3 wonderful kids, a senior in high school, a freshman in high school, and then a third grader. So we've been married 9 years and together since 2010. And I tell you, it's she's just like all those wonderful, remarkable people in my life. It's she doesn't take it easy on me, because she knows that quitting or giving up is not an option for me. And, even when I feel like I'm struggling and I could take it easy, she's like, "This is not you, Matt. You know better. You're going to regret it if you don't do it." And you know what, it's, at the end of the day, no matter what happens and whatever I do, whoever I, motivate or influence, it's those 3 kids and my wife are the ones that are my priorities, and they're the loves of my life.
Well, Matthew Bradford, I don't think I could ever express my gratitude for you and what you've done for this country. It's an honor. I feel so lucky that there are people like you that are willing to sacrifice everything for that flag that you wear on your shoulder. And again, it's just an honor to be able to speak with you. It's an honor to live under the same flag as you. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. And if you ever make it down to Lexington, or if I'm in Indianapolis, I'll let you know and we'll get together. And I don't do jiu-jitsu, but maybe we'll have dinner.
I love that. I do dinner way better than I do jiu-jitsu. So absolutely.
Well, when I did the Jocko podcast, I opened my mouth saying that I would learn how to do jiu-jitsu. And
oh, that's right.
Did you contacted by everybody in Kentucky? I'm like, oh, correct.
Did you ever try it?
I haven't. One of the trainers in the gym is actually a black belt trainer as well, and him and I've talked about it before. It's just so maybe it's something to give a shot. I'm always willing to try new things. So
absolutely. Oh, before we go, where can people find you if they want to find out more?
So thankfully I'm starting to get out and doing more speaking engagements, and if you want to contact me to come speak at a business, a church, a school, or an event, you can email me at simplify@matthew-bradford.com. My website is www.matthew-bradford.com. I sell Just Walk and No Legs, No Vision, No Problem t-shirts, and all those proceeds go to veterans, veteran cemeteries or anything we can do to help out the community. And then also you could follow me on Facebook, No Legs, No Vision, No Problem. I'm on Twitter at BionicMatt5. And then my Instagram is M_Bradford_USMC. I joke with my wife, why does a blind man need an Instagram? And she believes it helps out. So I don't even run my Instagram account.
Well, and you are a great follow. I don't know if I follow you on Instagram. I will now, but I follow you on Twitter, and you're one of my favorite follows. And I'll be sure to include all that information in the show notes so people can find all of your information easily. Matt, thank you again.
Thank you so much. It's great chatting with you.